State Representative Mihaela Plesa of Plano, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me again.
So the issue of taxpayer-funded education savings accounts or school vouchers came up in the legislature again this week during a hearing. And I'm wondering, how concerned are you that Republicans will have the votes next session starting in January to pass it?
Well, the public ed hearing or the education hearing that we saw this week in the interim showed that even though the legislature is trying to make it as hard as possible for parents and public educators and advocates to testify and have their voice heard by holding these meetings on literally the first and second day of back to school, shows that even though they tried to put those barriers up, we had an overwhelming amount of people that came out and had their voice heard and testified in favor of our public schools. In fact, over 200 pages of witness testimony on Monday alone. And that just shows that people love their public schools here in Texas. They're fighting for their public schools here in Texas, and they love their Friday night lights. And so I was paying attention, and I in my opinion, I continue to see bipartisan skepticism.
What stuck out to you about the hearing?
So one thing that, continues to come up over and over again is our rural legislators, our rural members who tend to be Republican members of the House. And they continuously bring up that these voucher scams do not do anything to promote their districts and their schools. One of my colleagues pointed out that he represents almost, I think, 19 counties. I might be mistaken, but it was somewhere around 19 counties, not one private school in any of those counties. So when you're talking about taking public money, public taxpayer money, and moving it into a private commodity, that hurts rural Texans just as much as it hurts school districts like Plano ISD.
And so do you think that the governor has the votes, or do you think he's bluffing?
Well, I don't think that the governor has the votes. I don't think that we'll know about what those votes look like until we're back on the House floor in the 89th legislative session. We don't even know what the bill looks like that we're talking about, right? I can tell you what the bills look like last session, and those bills we heard in these testimonies might have had some problems. I'll give you a perfect example. The last bill proposed was a $10,000 voucher, $10,000 coupon for the wealthy, right? The average
Well,
cost of a
it wasn't just the wealthy, it was to any student, right?
I think we've seen in the testimony that the majority of the parents that are benefiting from these vouchers are parents that have already had their kids in private schools. So, what we saw from out of state testimony, the states that were invited, Indiana, Utah, Florida, Arkansas, we saw that the majority of the students were parents that were already in some type of private school. And we saw that the average cost of a private school in the state of Texas is $11,500. So there's still going to be a gap there for families who are going to have trouble accessing these schools. Also, we know, and as we heard in testimony, that a lot of the private schools up their tuition once some of these voucher plans, bills, schemes have been implemented in other states. So we really need to look at what bill is crafted and how big of a bill this is. I'll give you another perfect example. Arizona. Nobody was invited from Arizona to come and testify in the committee. I wonder why. I think it's because recently some news has come out around how the voucher program has blown the Arizona budget. They're facing a $1.4 billion deficit. Their voucher program was originally supposed to cost somewhere only around $60 million. That's ballooned to $330 million this year, projected $425 million next year for the state of Arizona.
And let me ask you a question. When it comes to your belief, is there any room for compromise where if, let's say, certain things were to certain requirements for this $10,000 or whatever it turns out to be ESA for students if it eventually passes, where you would be comfortable with it?
I don't know. That's a long road from here to there. I don't see that being a possibility. And I'll tell you why. I don't think that these voucher scams are being pushed by Texans. I think they're being pushed from out of state billionaire donors. And I'll give you a perfect example. Governor Greg Abbott took a $6 million campaign donation from one of the largest voucher pushers in the United States. And he has bragged that that was the largest single donation in Texas history. So I'm concerned. Are people pushing these bills because they truly believe in it, or are they being paid to do so?
I asked the governor recently about whether he would support a clean bill independent of the education savings accounts, vouchers, school choice that he advocates, a clean bill for increasing state funding for public schools. And he would not commit to that. So when you hear that, what's your reaction?
I'm disappointed.
Why?
We're the eighth largest economy in the world. We educate over 5 million students. We're at the bottom of the list for per pupil spending for public education, basic allotment. And, had districts like mine seeing just a $1,000 increase to the basic allotment, there's data there that would have shown that we would not had to have closed four schools in my school district in Plano ISD. We would have seen a revenue of $30 million coming into our ISD, and that could have benefited schools like Davis Elementary, who had a specialty in students who are hard of hearing, deaf and hard of hearing. And so we're going to have to move the culture of that school to another school. That's going to impact House District 70 tremendously. So yeah, I mean, it's disappointing. It's really disappointing to hear him not want to commit to that.
And one other question on this topic, as it relates to the school choice issue, the governor said that he thought there would be more than enough votes, and he said that he predicted that Republicans would pick up 3 seats from the Democrats in the House, including yours. So I wanted to give you a chance to respond to that.
Yeah, I always knew that House District 70 was going to be in play. It is the most competitive seat out of the 150 seats in the Texas House of Representatives. Last election cycle in 2022, extremist Republicans spent over $4 million in this district to try to buy the seat. I was outspent 6-1. These policies are divisive. The voucher scam doesn't do anything for House District 70. This district is focused on passing policies that really matter to people of Plano, Richardson, Allen, and Dallas. And like I said to you before, I think that this really just needs to be a wake up call to public education advocates, to parents and teachers who love their Friday night lights, that we need to get to work to make sure that we have one public education champion representing Collin County in the Texas House of Representatives.
And is this your biggest issue for
Oh,
your campaign?
absolutely. Absolutely. Public education is the number 1 issue in House District 70. We are one of the largest payers into recapture, the recapture system. And so we really feel the hit when the state of Texas doesn't do its constitutional duty to fund public education in our state. So that's why I'll continue fighting to make sure that our school districts are robust and providing the same education that I had when I was going through Plano ISD when I was a brinker bear.
I want to ask you about another topic that is making headlines, and that is the Texas Attorney General has now sent a warning letter to the city of Dallas over a new policy by the State Fair of Texas, which will not allow people who have a concealed permit to carry a firearm to bring those firearms into the state fair. The Attorney General said that violates state law. What is your reaction to that?
Look, I grew up going to the State Fair of Texas. I still enjoy going to the fairgrounds, riding the Ferris wheel, going to the auto show, picking out what car, my dream car. I don't believe that we should be canceling the State Fair of Texas because they're just trying to create a safer environment for not only the patrons but also their employees. They are a private company, and they saw a shooting last year, and 3 people were injured. It shut down the park, for a couple of days or a day or so, and so I understand this want to keep a family friendly environment. I know that the State Fair of Texas had been in conversations with their board, with Dallas Police Department, DART Police, DISD, even the state legislature, the governor's office, and the lieutenant governor's office for a while. This isn't something that just popped up, right? They had been talking about this move. And as a matter of fact, the State Fair of Texas was actually one of the last or the last fair to implement this type of procedure. These types of measures have been passed from the South Plains Fair in Lubbock to the Houston Rodeo. So we just need to be, understanding that there are going to be 200 armed police officers, and I trust them, and I trust the work that they're going to do.
And just to be clear, the Attorney General letter was a legal threat that he will file a lawsuit and sue the city, take them to court if this is not changed in 15 days. There hasn't been any threats to cancel the state fair. I just wanted to make that very clear. But I also wanted to ask you, do you think that the law needs to change? Or do you think that in this case, they just need to allow the state fair to continue this policy? I mean, how far do you think this should go?
Well, I think, the State Fair of Texas, has the right to set those measures for themselves, just like the Houston Rodeo has, just like any other fair that operates in the state of Texas. So when I meant by cancels, I meant by cancel culture. When I see my colleagues sign on to a letter, condemning the State Fair of Texas for trying to keep their community safe after they saw, gun violence in Fair Park, that's crazy to me. And I think that that's why most people are ready for common sense gun legislation, making sure that people have to do a background check, that, we don't have a situation where 3 people were injured last year. These people are still in lawsuits. And we see that with gun victims all around the state of Texas. In the city of Allen, we see the victims there having a hard time getting compensation from the Crime Victims Fund. And so I think that it's a good move on the Texas State Fair.
Anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I mean, talking about the Texas State Fair, I'm just really excited that it's going to start up. I've heard that there are going to be amazing, tasty things there, and I'm ready for the cotton candy bacon on a stick, I think is what it was called, and it looked delicious. So I'm just excited and ready to get to work for the people of House District 70.
All right, State Representative Mihaela Plesa of Plano, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.